Hajime! Welcome back to Comic-Jutsu. JT McRoberts here with you. Today we're going to have a superhero spotlight focusing on the great Prince Namor, the Submariner, Namor of Atlantis. We are perhaps on the cusp of having this version of Namor as we have known him over the past 60, 70, 80 years. It's been a while. When was it? Yeah. Quite a while. Namor in Heroes Reborn. Artwork by Jim Lee. Here you see the World War II presented era Namor joined up with Captain America, Bucky. Is that Miss America? Is that her name? I don't remember. The U-Man. There's the Wizard. Baron Blood. I always like Baron Blood. I like the idea of the evil vampire fighting with the bad guys of World War II, fighting alongside Namor as he appeared in the Fantastic Four Annual Number 3, featuring the wedding of Sue and Reed. This is one of my prized possessions in my collection. It's not a super great copy, but as far as readers, it's a really nice copy. And it's fun to have that in one's collection, or the time that Namor teamed up with Rom. And here you can see a very Atlantean design behind Namor and his setting, which stays true to the original appearance in Funny Comics #1. What was the name of it? The little almost self-published ad that they passed out at the movie theaters that launched the origin of Prince Namor. This is a reprint, but it's a really fun reprint where Jack Kirby takes over for Gene Colan, and the story just suddenly switches styles right in the middle of the fight. Of course, Namor appeared when Cap returned. I love how this Namor just gets mad and throws the frozen Cap, and that's how they find him. You can see the underwater Atlantean organic seashell type aesthetic and sensibility to the production design there. And of course, the very cool John Byrne written and drawn by run of Namor when he used Atlantis's wealth to create, I believe it was called the Oracle Corporation, and used it to set himself up as a businessman of sorts. It's pretty interesting. But the cool thing about this run was when they went to Kunlun and resurrected Iron Fist, which was sorely needed. Of course, you can't do anything without a good cameo from Wolverine, though I'm not one to complain. There's Master Khan. Kind of gives away the origins of definitely the inspiration behind the original Iron Fist storylines, because if you're familiar with Iron Fist and the Kung Fu television series, you'll see a lot of the parallels, and Master Khan is one of them. Marvel Fanfare, Mike Mignola artwork. Try not to butcher too many names. And of course, he was a member of the Defenders, the original Defenders. This is another one of my fun little possessions. Number 3, I just won this for a really decent price on the secondary market, and really happy with it. It's in great condition. Nobody else bid on it, so I was happy to run away with it. Namor as the Defenders. I really liked his kind of black leather suit where it had the underwings there. But he also had this kind of magical belt of nobility that he would wear. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe you did not know that Magneto tried to recruit Namor to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So Namor's kind of considered the original mutant. And here we go. One of my favorite runs and one I wanted to talk about, which was when Namor crossed over with the Amazing Spider-Man in Spidey's own book. I'll just put these over to the side. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's early in the John Romita Jr. run. Very early. Like he just took over one issue before, where they introduced Madam Web, no less. And this particular run was written by Dennis O'Neil. And O'Neil was responsible for some cool stories over the year. I mean, perhaps most infamously for his part in the breaking of the Batman storyline, the whole Nightfall and all that stuff. Also, writing relevance into like the 70s era comics, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, that stuff. Here we have Namor making a guest appearance in Spider-Man, but the storyline actually stretches across several issues here, where Namor pops in and out. Now, with these superhuman battles, you really can't do a proper comic book dojo type breakdown, because they just fall straight into the old Kirby aesthetic of the over exaggerated postures, the dynamic action just splashing and flowing across the screen. But the fights themselves, I mean, they pretty much relegated themselves to mimicking Kirby's boxing, brawling, judo sort of basic style that he exhibited all the way back in Captain America Comics #1. And this is a cool little story because it crosses over with the Frightful Four. And I always thought the Frightful Four was an underrated Fantastic Four villain. I just thought it was cool that they were kind of this evil mirror of the great Fantastic Four. You know, you had the Wizard as the smart guy, and then the Trapster. Here you can see him kind of squared off with their opposite. The Trapster, aka Paste Pot Pete, versus the Invisible Girl. You know, she can make force fields versus his paste pot goo, so to speak. Mr. Fantastic here with his elasticity, and the Sandman with his amorphous body, you know, composed entirely of sand going up against him. Though you have the intellect of the Wizard balanced against the brains of Mr. Fantastic, of course. And this is actually one of my favorite iterations of it. I mean, it was cool when Medusa was a member of this group, but I like this because this is actually Reed Richards as the Brute from Counter Earth, which was an alternate Earth. And I love the whole idea of that, of this Earth on the opposite side of the sun. But anyway, they have a Reed Richards, and on that planet, that Reed Richards is evil, and he has kind of has the Hulk's powers, so he is the Brute. So I always love that version of it. The Brute does not appear in this particular story, but that was a little bit of needed backstory for it. So this is a fun little run because this is John Romita Jr. very early in his career. He admits that he was very rough and not ready at the time. So you see flashes of his compositions, like you can see the power and Namor just ripping this apart. But he's finished in this issue by Jim Mooney. You know, maybe the dynamicism of his storytelling may not be there yet, but a lot of flashes of it are here. You see these long 4 panels with the action flowing up and down, up and down. And his compositions always read. You flow through the page with it. This story was interesting because Namor is he's pissed off at the Navy, and he tears up this experiment, these machines that they've put out to do testing in the waters because they're too close to his home of Atlantis, and it's like causing a disruption for his home. So he feels justified in trying to defend his home. And of course, Spider-Man is going to get pulled into this. This is an interesting era for Peter Parker because he was kind of living that single guy life going to school and just living as a bachelor in New York. So that was pretty interesting. That was always one of the touchstones for Spider-Man for me, was he was supposed to be a relatable character. You saw him dealing with everyday problems, the sick aunt that he has to get medication for, and he's trying to get there, and Doc Ock interrupts him. As a little guy, I loved these Saturday morning shows, man. These cartoons, and we lived through such a great era because it was very influenced by Star Wars, and then you had the cross pollination from superheroes from over the years. But look at this superhero lineup: Godzilla and ɛneɪmɔːr. The Flintstones, not so much, but Captain Caveman there. Space Ghost came back on the Space Stars. That was a great series. Astro and the Space Dogs, pretty goofy, but Teen Force, okay. Hercules was great though. Even in their return, they were okay. And I like the ones where they all crossed over with each other. That was pretty cool stuff. Well, here you have Spider-Man. He's in a rush, and he puts on his casual dude jeans, his pants, his polyester flares, probably, based on when this was published. When was this? 1981, 1980. So this was in the heart of the Jim Shooter era, editorial era of Marvel Comics. Man, I wanted a copy of this so bad, because I would just look at the artwork and I'm like, man, look at how just precise and detailed these characters are, and they're powerful and dynamic. I just thought, man, I want to see that. So of course, Spidey goes to help out, and here we have Namor goes back to Atlantis and rouse up his people. Is this not cause for war? Our patience is at an end. He says the sovereignty of Atlantis has been violated. You had the side story, the B story, the love story of Spidey, of Peter with, who's this? Is this Debbie? Yeah, I think this was Debbie. And of course, Aunt May, always there in the background. You can see the John Romita Jr. beneath this, and also with the characters. Once you're familiar with his faces, it's just the Jim Mooney really overshadows it. But again, he says that he was rough here, and you can see it a lot in the backgrounds. I mean, these buildings are very believable. I mean, they're just enough there to make you believe in these settings, but his compositions will get a lot stronger, of course, as the years go by. But who am I to talk about the great John Romita Jr.? But anyway, just giving you my impressions. You could just definitely see JR all in that. But look at this. This is all believable. The big ship, it's got weight to it. Here you go. So Namor makes his attack, and of course, Spider-Man is there when it happens. And I love the matchup in these superhuman fights. So you're not going to see anything more than punches and bunches, right cross, left hook, uppercuts. You'll see the body blows. You've got these literal flying Superman type punches, That was one of the cool things about Spidey's webbing, is it was really tough. And I mean, it was probably just tough enough that Namor had trouble tearing it apart. So that made this an interesting matchup. In terms of strength and speed, they're probably about the same in terms of speed. Spidey might have a slight edge, but Namor is fairly agile. But Spider-Man was stuck in that 10-ton range in terms of strength and power, while Namor could go up to about 75 tons, and then in the water, 100 tons, and probably above. So here you just see just punches and punches. This is actually a double axe handle. It looks like he pulled this out of the Captain Kirk playbook. You'll see that on Star Trek, where he uses the two hands. But the axe handle, you're supposed to come down over one's head and striking down. the double axe handle, rather, like one has in Axe Handle. But yeah, you can see there's the dynamic flow of the action, and the characters remain solid, and they're just, every plane is believable here. And it's just good storytelling. Nothing fancy, but he keeps reminding you where they are. You see the powers at play. Spidey goes back to the webbing. Man, I love these old electronic games. I tell you what, I lusted after them. I was lucky enough to get like some kind of weird bootleg Japanese Donkey Kong game when I was really young. Though the one I probably wanted the most was like the original Dungeons and Dragons handheld. That just seemed awesome to me at the time. It just seemed unbelievable. But I had this bootleg Japanese Donkey Kong. I mean, it came from Japan, and it was called Donkey Kong, but it was completely different. It didn't have color, and it was just the little black figures going back and forth across the screen. But anyway, back to Namor and Spider-Man. Here you see. Oh, this is actually, I just about glossed over it. Right here, Spidey baits him into smashing into the smokestack here. So in a lot of ways, this is actually a combat concept, drawing in your opponent. Of course, it's no different than luring in the bull with a red flag, like a matador. But it's also an attack by drawing, by making himself seem vulnerable and waiting to the last moment where he gets out of the way, and his desired effect is called into play. So Submariner smashes into that, and the smoke actually causes him to dehydrate somewhat. The smoke and heat causes him to dehydrate, and Spidey knows that this will weaken him, which makes him more manageable. So here you see that starting to come into play. I love it when they use like pseudoscience and physics to have the hero overcome the villain, or in this case the misled hero of anti-hero of this particular story, which is Namor. Here Namor just backfists him. Of course, this is super strong, arm power only, but what arms they are. I mean, he could smash through steel like it's paper, so you just swing your arms. A little bit of ground fighting here, but you're never going to see technique in these kind of things, which to me, it makes it interesting. Like there's an opening to see super powered characters with technique. And you see that in some other character designs, like Jim Starlin's version of Captain Marvel. I mean, he would always make those karate knife hands and stuff, and try to make it look like he was doing like outer space jiu-jitsu, man. So there you go. Spidey convinces him to see the error of his ways. Meanwhile, we've got Iron Man over here dealing with the bank robbers over the Hostess fruit pies. Man, these cartoons used to make me love fruit pies. Tell you what, but then you would go and eat them, and they were just nasty. They would be cold and nasty on the inside. For some reason, you were never quite prepared for the cold and the slimy texture of them once you actually bit into them. And then the stomach ache, 30 minutes later. Captain Universe, another Steve Ditko creation. Very interesting. So essentially what happens is Namor talks to the Navy, says, you should do your testing a few miles away, and it won't disturb Atlantis, and then we won't have any problems. Navy people are like, okay, that's cool. Namor pieces out. Spidey, meanwhile, says, I've got to go, but I am itching, and I just can't get to it. The Wet Threat of Hydro Man. Oh, I didn't put my Hydro Man issue out here. Well, next issue is a Hydro Man issue. After that, you have the Frightful Four storylines start to kick in. And we won't go through these page by page, but we'll kind of flip through them quickly. But I love the old foreshadowing here, and with the splash image. Like how they use the silhouette images, and it's like, who could these villains be? Who are they? And you have all this carried out. And I remember when I originally read this, I thought just that. I thought, wow, who is this? Can't wait to find out who this character is. And then when you find out, you're just kind of like, oh, who? Really? But no, yeah, so you have our mysterious villain of this particular story is breaking the wizard out of, I believe this is Rikers Island, isn't it? They get a few different guys out of Rikers. Yeah, Rikers Island, a place of despair, a prison. Which is very true. I mean, I believe even today, Rikers is infamous for having such poor living conditions and just prisoners with their rights being abused and people awaiting trials that have been in there for months and months and months. And anyway, we don't want to sound political or anything, but it's a good choice to put the guy in Rikers. It's a miserable place to be. Wizard gets broke out, and there's a huge behemoth here of some sort. This is almost like a kraken, except a kraken is usually just a giant octopus of sorts. Except in for the classic seminal film Clash of the Titans, where the kraken was a humanoid with 4 arms. Some kind of cheesing monster. And here we go. Getting back to relating to the common man, like Dusty Rhodes, baby. Son of a plumber. Here you see Peter Parker having to wash his costume by hand, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. He's in an apartment, so he doesn't have a washing machine and a dryer. If he goes out to someplace public, somebody sees him washing his costume, they're like, hey, are you Spider-Man? Though nowadays, with the advent of cosplay, I guess he could have gotten away with that. He'd just be like, yeah, I love to cosplay Spider-Man. And then people would try to shame him. You're too old to cosplay. Or somebody like me, I would be like, really, dude, Spider-Man, leave it for the kids. Did you make that costume? Really? Seriously? You made that costume? This is a cool B plot line here, where they introduce the new neighbor, the lovely new lady down the hall. She's the most gorgeous creature I've ever seen in all of my life. I mean, Peter goes head over heels for her instantly. And he goes back out with Debbie here. This is an interesting storyline, okay, because right after this stuff wraps up with Debbie, he starts to get into it with the Black Cat, and then after everything with the Black Cat falls apart is when the Mary Jane storyline finalizes itself and moves into the wedding series. Okay, this is interesting because he's washing his costume. Apparently he bleached it or something. He did something that made it fade, so it actually is faded. I know when I first looked at this, I probably kind of flipped near the back and I saw the costume and I thought, what is the color wrong in this issue? Like, what is going on? But anyway, here he's listening to the radio, which nowadays, would be a stream on YouTube or something from the local station. Report states that a giant mechanical spider is climbing the South Tower of the World Trade Center. So immediately, Spidey's sitting here like he's in room 237 of The Shining. More woe, giant spiders are my kind of menace. I can't ignore it. He's like, it's a giant spider. This is a sign. I'm Spider-Man. Something that probably led into the whole spider totem idea that Michael J. Straczynski came up with years later, which I really love, by the way. And there we have the 2 towers. The ill-fated, wow, giant spider. So he goes to deal with it, of course. But anyway, continuing the B storyline with the 2 girls on the same page. What great storytelling, too, in doing all of this. I kind of glossed right over the action there, but, there's not much to break down. You've got the giant mechanical spider, which is totally nuts. It's like a total James Bond villain type thing. Like, can you imagine the logistics of creating that kind of stuff? Like, who are the minions that put these things together? Or did the wizard work on it for like a year? And he's like, finally, my spider is ready. I shall unleash it upon the world. Here we have Frank Miller's Doctor Strange. I just love this artwork. I do not have this run. I might, unless it's in one of the collections that I just picked up. I don't have these Frank Miller issues. Watch for the new adventures of Earth's Sorcerer Supreme as mystically conjured by Roger Stern and Frank Miller. Here you can see where we are. The Empire Strikes Back. Rebel Forces Cap. Imperial Guard Cap. That's pretty sweet. And here you have Spidey squaring off with the Wizard and the mysterious figure from the beginning of the storyline. He goes over to help these people. Their building is on fire. There's like one vagrant left alone, so he uses his webbing as a shield, which is pretty cool. I love the versatility of the webbing. It's just like whatever you need it to be. And this was before the black synthoid costume and Venom and all that kind of stuff. Next issue, the Wizard, triumphant. But this is where Namor returns from. Check it out. Again, Fantastic Four, Frightful Four. Different iteration of them here. But I always like them as a underrated villain group. Oh, I was going to show you, there you go, Submariner, Motion Picture Funnies Weekly, 1939, by Bill Everett. This is a cool little collection if you want to have a little bit of the golden age of Marvel Comics, back when they were timely comics. Look how moody this Bill Everett stuff is. There you have the Submariner. And it's really awesome that in this, right here off the bat, you have his whole origin, everything. You have you have his motivations. He's constantly dealing with the invasion of his lands in Atlantis and waging his personal war on the upper worlders, or what does he call them? I don't know, the civilization of man or whatever. But here you go. And that's all, reflected in the story where he showed up a couple issues ago. So pick up with Spidey in the web shield. Now, you see a lot more of John Romita Jr. here. Look at this. Something as simple as this. Okay, the mattress, the wet mattress to hold off the flames here. Look at this, and you see the weight of it. I mean, that would be so easy to draw that where it's just indecipherable. Again, the Wizard and his mystery partner. And here we continue the love story, the girl next door. And here we see the rest of the Frightful Four, Sandman and Trapster, in their cells. And this actually made me laugh because they're just sitting there in their costumes. It's like, what kind of prison lets you sit in your costume in your cell? They just sit in there and plot with each other. That's so funny to me. But, I imagine this was probably editorial direction here. They said, the people have to know that this is Sandman. They have to know that this is the Trapster. So you've got to put them in their costumes. And here we have our mystery guest villain and the Wizard come and break the Sandman and Trapster out. And they're being watched by another mysterious figure, which, if you're familiar with Namor at all, and he says Prince Namor here, you'll recognize that as an Atlantean. And here we have the formation of the Frightful Four. We have the big surprise weapon, his latest invention here that the Wizard has made. And he says this is going to take care of him once and for all. And here is Prince Namor as is slowly going to change. Well, not slowly anymore. It's instantly changed. I mean, we'll probably never see this version of Namor again. This Atlantean, organic, grown type underwater look. Everything has that deep sea look. It looks like shells and clams and organic reefs that have grown. Love these sitting in a giant shell like that. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with like the presentation of Toclacan, however you say it, in the new Black Panther film. But I haven't seen it yet, and it's just that it's a shame to lose this kind of original Atlantean imagination. You know, I'd like to see that realized in the Marvel Universe rather than completely changing the backstory of this character and making him something else. But it's already done. Here you go. Nice flow of the action across the page. Look at how this just shoots you over here to Namor bursting through this wall. And then you've got the reaction of the woman here. So, you seek vengeance upon me? I don't know what you're talking about. And of course, Spidey surprises him. Because that's his neighbor. Like, he's not going to let Namor just bust in and attack his neighbor. So, using objects as weapons, something you can do as a superhuman. Spidey uses the webbing again. Here, like a trapped net. He's got little weights on it. I mean, that's just cool to give you the idea of the mechanics, the physical mechanics of what's happening there. He slams him into the ground. Good job, Spidey. Must have taken one of those judo lessons from Cap. You know, that would be really cool to have like a super powered superhero that had some martial capabilities and had some comparable foes that they went up against. Here you see the body blow. And again, this is all from the Captain America boxing, punching, judoka repertoire. Right punch to the solar plexus, essentially. The body blow. And then, of course, the left uppercut. With friends like these, she's bound to have enemies. Dazzler. Boy, oh boy, with Jim Shooter dead set on selling Dazzler to the world. But it just came too late. You know, if he'd have made it in 1971 as opposed to 1980, then it might have sold big. It was just too late in the disco cycle. So it's a pretty decent little Spidey and Namor battle, but Spidey makes the mistake of knocking him into the water tower. And of course that makes Namor even stronger. He knocks Spidey away, and then the Frightful Four shows up to take advantage of their melee. The mystery figure reveals herself as one of Namor's villains. My name is Lyra. For long years I have nurtured a hatred for Prince Namor. A hatred born because he spurned my desire for him. Yep. No fury like a woman scorned. There you go. Even Prince Namor knows that. But again, this is all part of that Atlantean aesthetic. You know, you've got this blue skin, the blue hair. I mean, you know, it's not that there's anything wrong with the Aztec influence look to what is now the new Namor. It's just that I would like to have seen this realized a bit as well. Or I would hope we can see it realized a bit. But anyway, so Wizard uses his latest invention to zap him. And he says, just you wait. Wait until it takes effect. Wahahaha. You've got the classic cliffhanger image here. Spidey and Namor writhing on the floor. And check this out. The former X-Men, number 142. So this is an ad for Days of Future Past. And just in looking at this, I mean, you've got this image of the Sentinel. And I think I remember seeing this at the time. And I was just like, what is this? This looks goofy. You know, because here it is saying, hi kids, we're back. And we've killed all the X-Men. Really? Except Kitty. And she's real small. Kind of gives away a little bit of the plot there. But it just made it look goofy. I was like, what? What are they talking about? I had no idea until it actually came out, and it was Days of Future Past. It became what it was. 132 Roman soldiers. I think I did order one of these at one point, and had all these figures, and they were cool. But then you kind of get bored with them after they fight with each other a couple times. So here we go. Namor and Spidey versus the Frightful Four. The artwork, to me, actually, the compositions take a little bit of a step back. I mean, obviously, you still have this solid figure. I mean, this is unbelievable. Even, I was going to say, even I have trouble drawing this. But, I mean, the way that Romita Jr. can just contort his figures and bend them up, and you see the physics in everything. You see the motion, the action and the reactions. Loves those back fists back then, especially. Man. See, that makes me think he wasn't so into boxing. He was just copying what was on the page from Jack Kirby before, or his father John Romita before him, Again, the wizard here gloating with Lyra. Now this is kind of an ugly image. Look at this. What is Sandman doing to Spidey there? Holy cow. If I say what I think that is, they might take this video down off of YouTube. Sandman, my goodness. Now that's a way to punish your heroes. You rarely see the villains get that sort of upper hand, so to speak, or should I say upper fist. Wizard, police helicopters, no. Here's Spidey again using the ever super adaptable webbing. If you ever played the DC superheroes, it would almost be an omni weapon. Just whatever you needed it for in that particular instance, that situation, your webbing can apply to it. And here he goes. Shoots them in the face and blinds them. Yep. Close your eyes. That webbing stings, fellas. Again, you've just got figures flying all across the page. I mean, and it's never boring with John Romita Jr. Even though you don't see his finished hand, and he said he was rough. He said he wasn't ready. His storytelling is definitely a lot stronger. His figures are stronger, but they're strong right out of the bat. I mean, just every time they're believable. Their existence in space, their motion, how they're reacting to their environment. Everything is just 100% believable. Spidey makes his way back to Debbie's. Well, first he tries to go see his new neighbor, but she's gone mysteriously. Then he goes to Debbie's, and Debbie takes care of him. He has to take off. So again, Spidey is not allowed to find happiness here. And essentially what happens after the One More Day reboot is you have Spidey stuck in this, or Peter Parker, if you will, stuck in this perpetual intermittent romantic cycle where he's not allowed to progress into true happiness in any way, or to have any sort of mature relationship. So that's what that is. Though we actually got to watch him evolve and grow over the years, and it would have been nice for them to close the book on the Mary Jane marriage in a more positive light. I'll just leave it at that. Again, good storytelling here, just basic stuff, but the figures are never boring. They're always composed dynamically in action. Sandman puffing on a stogie. Wizard looking on with his arms crossed. I love this kind of montage type artwork. Submariner holding his dead love, his beloved Dorma, thinking of Lyra and his desire for revenge. Here we are back at Atlantis. Spidey gets blindsided by Sandman and the Frightful Four in his new girlfriend's apartment. Who knew? So here you have Spidey captured wizard gloats. He puts his little anti-grav disc on him. I always thought this was kind of goofy, but at the same time, I guess it's pretty scary too. If you had something stuck to you that was going to make you just fly up in the air, like say if you were stuck on a hot air balloon, but it was going to go up and up and up and up until it got all the way out into space, you'd be pretty freaked out if you couldn't fly or if you didn't have a way back down. But luckily our boy Submariner shows up, who can fly with his little wings, who apparently, much like the Bumblebee, can fly despite the fact that he defies physics with those things. Again, you see the action just taking you across the page. You know, it's never the same way every time. Boom, whoosh. I love how he just explodes out into every corner of that panel. And here, a little bit of the inking just doesn't quite gel with what John Romita is doing. But again, that might be John Romita. I mean, he openly says he was still so rough at the time. But here you can see this kind of dynamic figure that JR was known for. Looks a little like Mike Zeck even. Sandman escapes by turning into sand. And of course they ask the Fantastic Four for help. So there you go. And at the end, they dap it up. Namor dips. Spidey goes back home. Oh, there's his girlfriend again. She's setting off his spider sense. Tries to stab him in the back. It's really Lyra. Who knew? Well, apparently Namor's the one who knew, so he shows back up to soccer. This is really funny because Spidey is essentially just holding her off. I mean, as in Atlantean, she's like stronger than normal humans. But Spidey, again, with his 10-ton strength, right there, he's obviously caught off guard because he should be able to just cross-face her, hold her back easily with one arm. But she's fairly strong, but then Namor shows up and gives her the old left cross here. Conk. Punk. Knocks her out in one blow. Wraps her up, carries her off. I like how Spidey says, yeah, you did what I wanted to and couldn't. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. Trying to walk that political, that line of political correctness there because Namor just punched out a female Atlantean. But there you go. That's what happens when females resort to villainy. Oh, and I entirely glossed over the effect, which I guess it's not really well represented visually, but the effect of his little ray here was it transfers their psychic abilities. So I think it put some of Spidey's psychic self into Namor and vice versa, and because of that, they're both having this adverse reaction where they're sick. So anyway, there you go. Just a fun little storyline where Namor does another classic crossover series of appearances from anti-hero to hero, and you get to see the young, burgeoning John Romita Jr. do what he does best. When they put it all out there, the Marvel way. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Comment below if you liked it. And we'll see you next time for a few more looks at our superhero spotlight. And don't miss the upcoming Comic Book Dojo right here on Comic-Jutsu. Mate!